Hello, friends. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today here on the Rachel Varga official Facebook page, YouTube channel, and of course, the Rachel Varga podcast. My name is Rachel. If you are new here, welcome. I am a board certified aesthetic nurse specialist with over 10 years of experience in the space of rejuvenation, anti-aging, skincare, all of that good stuff. And I've performed well over 20,000 rejuvenation procedures, academically published award-winning author in the space of aesthetic nursing and aesthetic medicine. So if you are interested in optimizing your body, mind, spirit, energy, getting just beautiful, vibrant skin, you are certainly in the right spot. Today, we're going to be focusing on vibrancy, eating for vibrancy, and what that looks like, and how different colors of food can actually have pretty neat, interesting energetic effects on our body as well. Before we get started, I just wanted to say be sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel, Facebook page here on the podcast, and hit the bell notification so that you know when I go live next and also when new episodes are released. So let me tell you about our guest today. We have joining us Cat Dillon, RHN. And Cat Dillon is a registered holistic nutritionist, professional chef, and certified transformational wellness coach. She assists wellness speakers through the commingling of food and color as medicine, holistic lifestyle principles, and transformational coaching. Cat teaches tangible steps to transform unsuccessful attempts at improving and maintaining health into an empowering nutrition and self-care program that gives energy, focus, and well-being for life. Cat helps motivate and educate clients at any level of change so they can become familiar with listening to their body's innate wisdom. By doing so, they can facilitate their own healing and receive their desired results. She helps clients suffering from anxiety, depression, insomnia, sugar and carb cravings, allergies, immune system imbalance, digestive difficulties, metabolic disorders, weight loss resistance, and many others. Kat operates her private practice in Encinitas, California, and is also the director of nutrition at Varga, a boutique wellness retreat located at the Park Hyatt Carlsbad. Learn more about Cat Dillon at routines-rituals.com. And Cat Dillon's contact information is going to be in the show notes of this episode. Welcome, Cat. It is great to have you here on the show.
Thank you, Rachel. I love being with you. You're just so, talk about vibrancy. You know, you are just the epitome of vibrancy. So love that.
Thank you. That, let's hope I walk the walk and talk the talk if I'm here showing up, sharing how you guys can achieve beauty, vibrancy, radiance, all of that. And it does come from cultivation. It's not just going to happen by accident. And Kat, actually, we had the opportunity of collaborating already in one of your projects. So I would love for you to just share with listeners here a little bit about what you're up to and how we collaborated and how everybody tuning in can help support you too.
Oh, yeah, Rachel. You know, I had such a great opportunity to have you on this show. And, you know, we've got 25 other people other than you. And you really brought to the table routines and rituals involving self-care, you know, talking about the things that we're allowing into our space and things that can actually hinder the way that we come across, right? We really want to instill this kind of inner living and inner beauty that's not just on the outside, but on the inside. And feeling good is really the first part of it. If you don't feel good inside, you're not going to feel good outside.
And that is definitely a truth for me. So, Kat, much emphasis is placed on dietary dogma and eliminating certain foods or groups of foods altogether. We tend to often forget the magic of color and biodiversity in our foods. What are your tips?
Well, my gosh, there is just so much behind that. This is a loaded question, but you know, really, we have come across so many in the last years and last decade, so many ways of eating. You know, we've got the different diets. We've got keto, South Beach, you know, every single diet on the planet. And what we seem to forget about is really what we're bringing in rather than what we're taking out. I mean, it's really a sad state of affairs when we're just worried about this causing that and this. I mean, it's a very negative thing when we're looking at so many different just taking away things. So what we need to do is look at the vibrancy of color. It's a really interesting way, and I like to bring this up with the chakras. And the chakras are the different energy spirals in the sorry here. I'm just a little bit distracted here for a second there, but there's magic in the way we are looking at food. Let's look at it on.
Yeah, I love what you're talking about. You're kind of alluding to this. So working with magic, whatever that might look like for you, whatever discipline you come from, whatever belief system you have, if we're thinking magic, maybe we're thinking like bioenergetics for a second, and our food can have energy and biodiversity to kind of like fuel us. So why don't you expand on some of the nuances of color and biodiversity in our foods and how that can help us optimize our skin and
Yeah,
just
Rachel.
feeling good?
Yeah. So the way I look at it is that colors are functional. They're not just things that we are eating. These are actually energetic properties. And so I love looking at the pigments in foods, and we're looking at phytochemicals here. These phytochemicals are anti-inflammatory, immune healing, and we can use them to achieve certain things in our body. For instance, let's look at the root chakra. It's our adrenal glands. It's our structure, it's our calming. So we can actually use these foods to ground ourselves. And so I like to look at it with foods such as the vitamin C rich foods, tomatoes, pomegranates, the berries, and they actually have grounding properties too. When we look at the reds, we look at things like beets, we look at red potatoes, we look at actually the proteins in our diet. So we think about meat; they're spiritually grounding us. So one thing that's really interesting, and I like to bring this up, is that we're talking about phytochemicals. That tomato products and lycopene. Lycopene is the antioxidant and phytochemical in tomato products, and so those actually can reduce. And we're talking about, let's say, with skincare, reducing sensitivity to UV rays in tomatoes. Tomatoes also protect against prostate cancer. Now, the key is to look at the tomato not only raw but cooked, and the studies are showing that actually processing and cooking the tomatoes actually helps us to really absorb the phytochemical properties. Yeah, and so the other thing is, traveling through the chakras, we'll look at the color orange. And the color orange has carotenoids that are fat soluble, and those actually assist skin. And those orange and yellow pigments.
Beta carotene, that's retinol.
Yeah. And it also, interestingly enough, has a lot of reproductive health qualities in the pigments. There's actually a study done on cattle, and they actually have studied that cattle actually produce higher levels of progesterone with higher beta carotene rich diet. Now, I know that's just a cattle study, but we can kind of understand a little bit more when we study this more. And all these things, Rachel, there's like thousands and thousands of phytochemicals that they have studied, and we're just looking at just very few when we talk about the carotenoids and the lycopenes, and that's part of the carotenoid family. We're looking at like the blues and purples, which I'll talk about in just a minute. The anthocyanidins; those are all. We're just looking at right now, listening and reading in the media. We're just looking at the very big top 40 or 50, but there's thousands. And some of them we don't even know about yet. But the yellows, I'll say, this is a real interesting one. This is associated with the third chakra, and that's our system of fire. And it's connected with digestion. It's also connected with happiness. I mean, think about the color yellow, right? It's a happy color. And interesting here to point out that yellow things, those can be very catalytic, and which means it actually helps a reaction take place. So look at things that are high in enzymes, like if you think about pineapple. Pineapple is a perfect catalytic enzyme. And you probably know that from your skin research. And then we look at things that are yellow, such as lemon, right? Lemon also can create that enzymatic reaction. When we think about, let's say, our warm water and lemon in the morning, right? What does that do? Well, it enhances our enzymes. It just boosts our system and gets it ready to start taking in food and taking in nutrients for the day. We can also look at the yellows as something like ginger, which also helps the digestion, helps enzymatic flow, right? Then, if you look at things like the color green, okay, we're moving up the chakra line, and that fourth chakra is green, and that signifies heart, lungs, breast tissue. Those are all colors of the cardiovascular system. We look at vitamins that are great for skin and for the entire physiology, vitamins K1, the folates, the fibers in greens, which help the cardiovascular system, and lowering homocysteine, that marker for inflammation. And then we look at green also as foods that are higher in nitrites for expanding blood vessels in the body, which also has something to do, big part to play in healthy skin tone and clarity.
So I just want to jump in for a second, because we have to be really careful about nitrates. This is like different. Can you just specify the difference between when we're looking at processed meats in the grocery store and they say nitrates compared to what you're talking to? Maybe just clarify that, because that's a question I have.
Great point. So there are the nitrites that are synthetic and added to foods to preserve them and to make them shelf stable, like, for instance, bacon, meats, and things like that are processed. And then we have the naturally occurring nitrites, and those are things that come in packages of, let's say, natural celery or beets and things like that. Now, I will say that there are some processors that are using nitrites in the form of celery, and they're actually synthesizing them and adding them to products like bacon and processed meats. That is probably okay. However, I would still be safe and just say, if you're looking for natural nitrates, you can get them from things like celery and other vegetables. But great point.
Yeah. Awesome. Why don't we move up to the throat chakra? And if a lot of us are, say, using our voice, or maybe you're even having difficulties communicating right now, like communicating how we're feeling, right? Because we're kind of, right now, humans, we're feeling all the feels, and we need to be able to communicate that with people around us. So what are some throat chakra assisting foods?
Yeah. So what we want to be clear about is that throat opening up, and what actually clears our throat, right? It's moist foods, it's liquid foods. It might be things that are beneficial for the area around the throat. So we look at things that are healthy for thyroid health. And so we ask ourselves, well, what's good for the thyroid? We heard about iodine. Now, we have to be careful about iodine. If you are autoimmune, and you may maybe waver from hyper to hypo. And so those things are, you want to talk to your practitioner about that. But generally, for the thyroid, iodine is very favorable, again, generally. And you can get those from things like sea vegetables. And I love using things like nori to wrap foods, use hijiki as a seaweed, using dulse as a great seaweed, but the sea vegetables are fantastic. So you think about foods that are either moist or foods that actually locate in the watery areas, even fish, right? So that can be very helpful.
Awesome. So what about our third eye chakra?
That's a great one. That is my absolute favorite. I tell you, Rachel,
Why is that your favorite?
yeah. So I think it's
Shouldn't
my
they all
favorite.
be our favorites? Like I tend to like notice that people they have favorites, but really it's a matter of just giving all of them attention, is it not?
Absolutely, absolutely. It's the rainbow,
Mhm.
right? But the purple I love, well, not only because I love the color, that's a big part of it, but I'm really into focus and also into dreaming or um, planning. And those kinds of things are all cognition. And so the cognitive effects that we're getting from dark purple and blue things like blackberries and blueberries, we can get them from purple potatoes, purple sweet potatoes, even the color that you see in some kales. Some kales can be purple, and now you can find purple broccoli. I mean, it's incredible what we can find right now when it comes to different colors of vegetables. So if you're shopping and you are buying some greens, if you can find them with a purple hint or a tinge on the leaves, buy those instead. Same thing with purple carrots. And I don't know if you know this, but purple carrots were actually the original carrot. And they were bred out. The color was actually bred out because it signified poison.
That's interesting. I actually do when I want to say just like have some carrots with me on the go, I'll go for the colored ones. And there's orange, there's kind of like a lighter white yellow, and then there's a purple. And I'm just holding up the different chakra colors here. So when I was mentioning, we kind of tend to pay like more attention on maybe one or two chakras if we have some favorites. But I do actually just like to have something like this around so that I get reminded to focus on the different colors and their correlation to different body systems. So, what about our crown chakra? How can we do
Yeah.
that?
Oh, I love the crown chakra now because now we understand so much more about the body and how what affects it when it comes to really grounding it, yet getting out there in a more spiritual sense. And I would say this chakra is the chakra that's associated with the color white. That the color white denotes detoxification. And we also wanted to put in here, and this is really important, that it's also fasting and having no food, right? So we think about, some people do better in fasting than others. But if we look at fasting, let's say intermittent fasting, it's actually clearing old sludge. It's actually cleaning our body cells out so we can make new cells. It's actually uh, taking our old trash out, right, from our memories and our days on past, and making room for new memories. So that's a real important one. So we want to look at that for uh, cognitive challenges. We can look at it for finding something in your life that's creating more meaning on the spiritual side, right? So that's our chakra that's associated with the ethereal, with the other world, and also with having a greater meaning in your life.
So, what are some of the foods that can help to support that?
Yeah, so some of the foods are things, detoxifying foods, like any of the cruciferous vegetables, the foods, and I'll say what the cruciferous are things like, let's say, cauliflower and broccoli, but we'll play on white here. Think about the foods like the allium family, which are the onions, it's the garlic, the leeks, the shallots, all of those things, which are really detoxifying magnificently.
Lovely. I loved having you take us through that. That's very interesting. I've never really actually heard anybody break it down that way. So when we had a chance to connect, I was like, whoa, we can actually eat certain foods to then have a grounding impact on our bodies, which is really cool. So just to switch topics here, we're thinking about convenience. A lot of us are, getting takeout or whatever. The weather's getting a bit nicer. We might want to sit outside on the patio and enjoy a nice meal. So, what critical question do we need to be asking our servers about the foods that the oils that our foods are cooked in. So what do we want to ask at our next restaurant visit, and how can you follow suit at home?
That is a big loaded question because we don't really have a choice, or I mean, on a large spectrum, we do. We can eat at restaurants that have organic foods. We can, try and order things that are colorful. But when it comes down to it, it's not about what they're serving, but it's really about how they're making it. And I'll tell you, Rachel, I mean, having worked in restaurants for years before, it's very cost prohibitive for a restaurant to buy coconut oil or the best ghee, or to find, get olive oil for cooking. And of course, you don't want to be cooking too high of a temperature with olive oil. But what's being used at most restaurants is really a combination between olive oil and canola oil. And there's an issue with that, right? Um, the issue is that all canola oil goes through the process of it's high on omega-3, number one, but there's an issue with that because if it's heated at a high temperature, which it is at restaurants, you're really, really destroying that and making it more toxic. The other thing is, because canola has a property in it that's very toxic, it has to be gotten rid of using hexane. And hexane is a very toxic substance. Now, the other thing is that canola goes through refining and bleaching, and it also gets degummed. I remember bringing in vats of canola oil, and this was, not at restaurants that I was a chef in, but restaurants where I just a cook, and looking at this like, oh my gosh. So, I was telling you that the canola had a lot of omega-3. Now, the problem with that is, remember when I said that it can become rancid or it can become destroyed? Well, that's when it actually smells. And so the smell of that substance in the canola oil, the rancidity, it has to be deodorized. So there is a problem with that. And you're getting basically oils that have undergone this deodorization process. And so not only is that a bit toxic, but it's removing a huge portion of the omega-3s that you wanted in the first place. So it's not your best option. So what I would say is that you want to ask your server what type of oil that they're using. Is it a combination oil? Can you just cook in olive oil or butter or coconut oil? And then the other thing is really is if the food is cooked at a high temperature, which generally they are, and a lot of restaurants are using non-stick, which is also contraindicated with health. The non-stick can give you volatile chemicals that can really, really be very damaging to the blood vessels and to your brain. But the problem also is with these high temperatures, you're getting what's called advanced glycation. And the acronym for that is AGEs, AGE. So it's advanced glycated end products. And so those form between an interaction between the protein and the sugars in the food. And so that combination in heat is not a favorable combination for anything. It's creating a lot of inflammation, a lot of aging, just like it is. Aging ages. It's aging your skin and aging your entire body.
I've actually never heard of anybody talk about AGEs, or advanced glycation end products, in reference to cooking oils. This is actually the first time I've even heard of it.
Mm-hmm.
I'll usually hear about that with eating sugar and how that has quite a detrimental impact on the skin. If you look at individuals who are diabetic, they tend to have very kind of like squarish, large pores, patchy skin. It's not very glassy, and that's because of the AGEs on the skin. And in some medical grade skincare products that I've worked with for the last 10 years, they actually have agents in these products to gobble up the AGEs and help to mitigate their impact on the skin. So that's really fascinating. I do just want to add something here, because when I go and look at, say, healthy snacks, a lot of times these products have canola oil in them. So just because a product is marketed as being like a healthy snack, say for example, popcorn, if you're looking for like some type of carbohydrate treat like that, because you get that, dopamine hit when you have carbs and sugar, but you do want to pay attention. So maybe just make your own popcorn at home, use some like coconut oil on it, season it yourself. That's what I like to do, because those seem to be hidden in a lot of different snacks.
Yeah, but there are things that you can do just real quick. I mean, things like using an abundance of herbs when you're cooking can really help mitigate that damage. The other thing is cooking at a lower temperature, trying some broth steaming and then adding the oil at the very end. The other thing is looking at quercetin, which is contained in apples. The apple skin, apple peels are extremely high in quercetin. That can be really helpful. Pomegranates, actually, they have an amazing antioxidant potential. I like to make dressings and sausage with crushed pomegranates. That's always really, really great. Especially pomegranate, the flavor of pomegranates and rosemary. And then rosemary also is an incredible antioxidant, which can really help rid you of ages. But be very careful. And, talking about, it's not only your restaurants, it's what you're doing at home. And when you're barbecuing out there in the summertime, it's often that you're seeing that charring on the outside of your meats, and that is really dangerous. So be really careful. What I like to do with that is, I'll color and brown very slightly my vegetables and my meat, and then I'll finish it in the oven. So we're really ensured a nice, flavorful crust, very light, but not just permeating your meats, because it's just really, really caustic and toxic.
I just started salivating a little bit.
Yeah.
I wanted to share a quick tip. We grow a lot of our own vegetables here, our own herbs. So I have parsley, thyme, oregano, sage, rosemary, mint, a few other things happening. And what I'll do is I'll just be walking around the yard, and then I'll just like grab some, like eat on the go. It's like a salad on the go, guys. It's hilarious. But I'm focusing on some brain health optimization. And that's actually one of the things that's been recommended for me, is to actually have more herbs in my diet and more fresh herbs. And you can even do like your own microgreens in your own kitchen to make your own herbs, because going to the store to buy like a little packet of them, they're kind of old. So by the time you then go to eat it and cook it, it's lost a lot of that enzymatic action, and the phytonutrients are so key. So fresh is always best. So Kat, what are some certain plant prep and storage hacks and tips that you have to help increase antioxidants and anti-inflammatory benefits? And also, what's your take on eating leftovers and the histamine that I've heard can get, you get higher rates of histamine in your food if you're eating food past 24 hours?
Great question. Oh my gosh, there's so many hacks here with prep and storage. One thing regarding storage, I would say is, well, let me go to the prep first. One way to really increase a lot of your phytochemicals is to actually tear your greens, or tear your lettuce, or tear the leaves of what you're using before you eat it. And it's kind of the same principle as when you crush garlic and you let it sit for a bit. So that's enhancing the protective phytochemicals that are in that specific plant that actually protects itself. So the plant actually believes, it has a mind of its own, and it believes, it thinks that it is actually being attacked by a predator. So that's when it will exude and release some of these really harmful, protective phytochemicals that help it stay alive. So the beauty is that there's that relationship between the plants and us, is that we actually ingest those plants and we get the benefits of those phytochemicals. So another one is really interesting that I learned just about a year ago. It's really fascinating that if you actually take some of your greens and you leave them out in your counter before you eat them, maybe a few hours before, and have them absorb the rays, the rays of the sun, it actually boosts the phytochemicals of the greens that you're eating. The same thing goes with mushrooms. Mushrooms are a really good one for, I mean, I'm sure you talk about this all the time, Rachel, for stress and immunity. I mean, one of the biggest functional foods around that you can get is really like eating as many wild mushrooms as you can. But also when it comes to storage, I also think about planning. And, a lot of people don't get the foods in because they're not planned, right? So looking at, creating maybe 2 things, 3 things that you have during your week that you have as standby go-tos. And one for me is some sort of herb or a multitude of herbs or spices and pounded with garlic and olive oil. And so I'll use that as a marinade. I'll use it as a spread. I'll use it as, let's say, a starter for a salad dressing. So you could get your favorite pesto recipe, and then interchange that with different herbs or different seeds or nuts. Cilantro is one of my biggest favorites, absolutely, in the world, because it is so detoxifying and it's so flavorful, and it just has a beautiful fresh flavor for the spring and summer. So what I do with that is I love the combination of cilantro and pumpkin seeds, and that's a really nice one with mint as well. That's another really fresh, invigorating one. Another one that you can throw in there that people don't think about is if you're growing fennel, the fronds, the little leaves that grow, you can pound that together, and that is super tasty too. And you were talking about the histamines. That's a real big factor for a lot of people. But the thing is, not all of us suffer from histamine intolerance. So it's kind of like the similar principle as diets, as we talked about before. Diets, we can be on so many different plans or ways and hear so many different things that we fail to even enjoy our food anymore, right? And that's a huge, on top of the stressors that we already have in our daily living. Worrying so much about your food can actually create more of a problem and more of an issue with absorbing, breaking down your food into nutrients than not. So it's a healthy balance, Rachel. It's like, we're talking about not one color over another, it's all of them. And also just knowing that it's not the one food that you ate yesterday that's going to screw you up. It's how were you during the whole week? Did you have mostly things that were really nice and plant rich, right? We're not talking about, being a vegan or anything really dogmatic, but it's how were you eating? Were you eating in a rush state? Were you stressed out, right? One thing I love to tell my clients is this little small rule that I have, and it's a nice one that works for me. It's called 5, 10, 15. And what that is it's 5 belly breaths before you even pick up your utensil, 10 chews per mouthful, and 15 minutes of solid eating without being distracted by your phone or the TV or a phone call or being on the computer. So that's really important. It really is essential. And take your time when you're cooking. Cooking, sometimes, I talk to clients and they'll tell me, oh, yeah, I don't cook. It's like a badge of honor that they don't cook. It's like, what the hell? You want to cook. Cooking is very, very, you can use that as your meditation. Cooking should be something that's sacred, and it's your time in order that you can really ground yourself and make the space for the food. And even when you're shopping is the same thing, although now it's a little kind of weird with the mask on and everything. But what you can do is just look at it, feel it. Soon we'll be able to actually smell it. But if you're in your garden, you can do that. And that also enhances the flow of enzymes, enhances the, relaxes the belly, relaxes the intestines, brings more, eating doesn't begin with just smelling. It's actually, it begins in the brain, right? Which is part of our smell. But it doesn't begin with, in the esophagus and down to the stomach. That's not how it goes. It actually, eating is essential to start with the mind and what you're thinking and enjoying about the food.
That's beautiful. I love all the tips that you've shared,
Yeah.
and thank you so much for hanging out with us here on the Rachel Varga official Facebook page, YouTube channel, and podcast. And be sure to hang out with Cat Dillon at routines-rituals.com. And Cat's contact details are in the description box of this episode. And Cat, just why don't you tell everybody how they can work with you, how they can support you, how you can help people?
Oh, yeah. So you can always check me out on my website. It's catdillon.com, or on Facebook at Cat Dillon RHN. Same thing with Instagram. And then I've got a little group on Facebook. It's called Healthy Hacks That Last. And you can check me out there. And I love talking about food and about how we can enhance foods. It's there's so many things that you can do. There's so many, there's so much synergy when it comes to food. It's not just about what you're eating, but what you can put together with it to really enhance it and to enhance the pleasure that you're getting from your food.
Beautiful words. And thank you so much for hanging out with us here
Thanks,
today,
Rachel.
Kat. And for everybody tuning in, I'm so grateful for each and every one of you. Thank you for taking the time to be here with us and learn about ways to support your body, mind, spirit, energy to bring forth a higher level of beauty and radiance. Don't forget to subscribe, hit that bell notification so that you know when I go live next and when new episodes are released. So until next time, everybody stay happy, healthy, joyful, reject the fear right now. Just stay your sovereign self. Make sure that you're focusing on ways to stay grounded and balanced, and have a fantastic rest of the day, everybody. Thanks, Kat, for hanging out with us here today.
Thanks, Rachel.